excitement and chaos all the way around this track here in Long Beach.
That DXDT Corvette might be a factor today in Wickens' debut.
The over-under, the street fight continues.
What a season Winward Racing have put together.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Yocum. Welcome to another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. A big show ahead. Winward Racing owner and defending series champion at GTD, Russel Ward, will stop by. Robert Wickens, back-to-back episodes. He'll stop by to talk about everything that he learned of his first GT race at Long Beach. And then Pipo Derani, he watched it all on television as he prepares for the new Genesis program and a big unveil in New York City, which he'll talk all about that later in the show. But first, let's start with the defending series champ and also the championship point leader in GTD, and that's Russel Ward. So, Russell, when you left Long Beach, did it almost feel like a win? Your team scoring their best finish on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I love Long Beach. It's such a great track to drive, and the fans are fantastic. And you know, as much as you want to win every race, I think that's not realistic. So, you know, for us, I mean, we extended the points lead, you know, from this race, and you know, we walked away with our heads held pretty high.
Now, when you look at the finishes this year, consistency. I mean, that's in all caps on the headlines: a fourth, a win at Sebring, and then a fourth again. But I think if you look at the points, and you can start out by just setting the tone in qualifying, you've scored, 87 points this year in qualifying points compared to 47 from a year ago. So how has that set the tone for you and your team to execute to even a higher level, maybe compared to last year?
Yeah, I mean, we realized that the points from the qualifying are really important. I mean, if you can, they're about 10% of the race points, so it adds up at the end of the year. And last year we had an amazing year where we won the first three races, and we're really able to kind of ride that wave to the end. And this year it looks a little bit more difficult. We haven't had the same luck and performance that we've had in the past couple of years. So we just want to try to get the most points out of every race, and that starts in qualifying.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple different champions in different disciplines, and they'll all say to be able to back up a championship is incredible because it's hard to maintain, the focus, the edge, because of climbing the mountain and getting to the top and then trying to stay there because you've got so many more outside distractions. So where do you feel like you guys have learned from last year and you haven't really lost anything? You really have picked up and taken it to another level.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's definitely some things that we learned, last year, but I think that from the previous years, we've had some really, really tough learning years. Last year was an amazing year for us. It's the best year Winward Racing's ever had, and but we didn't kind of rest on our laurels and expect it to happen again. I mean, my approach to, this team, and, you've closed out a season. I mean, where do you want to be at the end of the season? You want to be at the top. So you're always looking at the guys at the top. What did they do? What did they do differently throughout the season than we did? And how can we, kind of bring the program up to a level to where we can compete with them? So, I think 2023 was a big learning year, for us. And, I think we executed quite well in 2024. And, now we're kind of, I think, tweaking small things within the team, perhaps, analyzing some strategy mistakes that we made, analyzing, different, kind of wear points in the car. We encountered some issues towards the end of the season, which we carried kind of from Watkins Glen from last year. And, even though, we've been, running these cars for, more than half a decade now, still things that you learn, every single day, on just simple things, how to put the car together, what lasts, when should you change certain parts, things like that. And, just to get the absolute maximum reliability out of the car and also the ultimate performance.
When you look at Winward, and I've talked to several of the crew guys, and they'll say one word to describe this team is family. And it has a great family atmosphere. Your dad, yourself, you guys sat down. It's almost like you sat down with a blueprint. Okay, we're going to go at this with our vision, with our speed. we're not going to try to get too far ahead of our skis. And it just seems like that, every step that you guys check a box, the new shop that you opened up, within the last year, another great example of we're in it for the long haul. And it's not only a great opportunity to sell corporate partners, but when you're looking at new team members, like, look, this is how invested we are, and we're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, what I like to see is just a constant level of improvement. I mean, every time you go to a race, we sit down and we figure out, what did we do well? What did we not do well? Try to make a couple of changes to the next event and figure out how to make things, run just a little bit more smoothly. So, we're really excited about this new facility, here in Houston, and it's kind of the talk of the town. We, get a lot of visitors here every day, and, it's a beautiful location, and, I think helps, bring some employees here as well, because it's a little difficult to, get people to drop what they're doing, relocate to Houston. But when they see the investment that, Bryce makes into their company, I think that gives them, an affirmation that they're making the right choice. And that, like you said, we're going to be here for a long time.
So Russell, give me more of a walkthrough of the shop and all of the efforts that you guys put into designing it, because you thought out every single thing so that it would be perfect, not just for today, but 5 or 10 years down the road.
So, I mean, we had a really unique opportunity to kind of build a facility here that's, just exclusively works on race cars and servicing, endurance sports cars for, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and around the world. And, it's just that it was kind of purpose designed. And we looked at some of the old place we were staying, which was a warehouse about 10 minutes from here. And, what are the main issues that we have here in Houston? What can we improve? We had this unique opportunity. What can we put in there? And there were a couple of things that came to mind. We had the ability to park one truck inside the building at the old place, which was, I mean, incredibly nice for loading, especially if you're in any inclement weather. You can keep the race cars out of the rain. You can keep, everything, kind of climate controlled, helps save the life of the trucks. We put in essentially a large truck bay, an indoor truck bay that holds 3 trucks, so we can get, our 2 main race haulers and a support trailer in there, and load the cars indoors, which is really helpful and makes things really easy and keeps everything clean. There's 2 other things that we were struggling with, and one of them was carbon fiber repair. This isn't here in Houston. They don't do a lot of carbon fiber repair. There is, some people around here, but they're pretty busy. And, mainly that business is, what we found was done in, North Carolina, Florida, some in California. And so it was very difficult in time and took a lot of time to, take this carbon work, ship it to Florida or, across the country and, wait 2 weeks for it to get back, possibly broken because, it wasn't packaged correctly or, someone rode over with a forklift, whatever. I mean, it's happened to us. So, we put in a full service carbon fiber repair shop in here, to just really do all of the carbon work on the Mercedes. And it's quite hungry for the carbon. I mean, it eats through the floors quite badly, front bumper, pretty much anything that can be touched, at the end of these endurance races and needs to get repaired. So, and then the final thing that we put in there was a full service vinyl shop. I mean, we wanted to kind of step up the visual profile of the cars and put something a little more flashy on there. We've kind of been running the same livery for the past couple of years, and it was stuff that really I installed on the car myself, and I'm proud of it, but it can be done by somebody who does a good job, not by me. And so we put that in here, and with a full printer and laminator and cutter and everything, so we can really. I can put Matt Yocum's face on the side of the car if I wanted to. So, but so it just allows you to kind of streamline the repair on the car. So the cars come in, they get unloaded, they get pushed right into their car bay. Bodywork comes off, goes to carbon fiber repair. That gets done. It goes to the vinyl room next door, gets wrapped, and then gets installed back on the car. And it kind of turned, would be maybe a 2 to 3 week process into, 2 to 3 day process. So it's been really beneficial for us.
Sebring, 2 years ago, it wasn't the greatest of 12 hours for Winward. You guys were involved in a crash and the car didn't finish. And I looked over and I saw Russel Ward helping the team with 45 minutes to go, breaking down the pit box. You were folding up the canopy for the pit box. And I thought that said so much. That was a Roger Penske type move. where all for one and one for all. And that type of an example, I thought, just spoke volumes about you, your character, and, how you preach and you play it, and that type of mentality, that builds chemistry and loyalty within an organization.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. And, I'm here every single day with the guys, and I see the effort that they put in. I mean, it's, 12 hours a day and sometimes even longer. I mean, it's kind of, whatever it takes to make every, part of that car perfect. We have all this pit equipment we've got to maintain, keep it clean, for our sponsors, things like that. And so, I see that effort every single day, here at the shop. And, at the track, I am a driver, and that's my main responsibility. And it's a heavy responsibility because, all this effort goes into it, and, you want to perform at the end of the day. But, I just kind of have a hard time sitting around, especially, after a race, and, I want to get involved. I mean, I don't want them to see me sitting around, and, I don't want to see them sitting around. So it's kind of, look, let me get in there, and I'll start helping. I mean, I know what to do. And, sometimes I'm sure I get in the way and they'd like me to leave, but unfortunately they can't tell me. So, I'm going to be there anyway.
I remember 2 years ago, we were getting ready to go to an IMSA WeatherTech event, and we were talking on the phone, getting a little bit of homework done before we even got to the event. And you and Phil Ellis, your teammate, you guys were going to an electronics store to buy more electronics because you were hooking up your dad's sim rig and working on yours. So, I mean, he is like a brother in a way and a big part of the family. How is he an advantage, and how does he get the most to help you, get that talent to 10/10, which is what you chase every time you're on the track at every lap?
Yeah, me and Philip, we met, I think, back in 2018. I think the first race we did was an endurance race in Spa. I think it was in Preventic, I think, and we really just kind of hit it off right away, and have a lot of the same interests. And over the years have developed a really good friendship. I mean, we both kind of like the same setup in a car, and both push each other, even away from the weekends, to try to get the most out of each other. And also I think the relationship is it's fun, and we're joking around when we can, but also really professional. I mean, we come here for a reason, and I think that's to bring the whole team forward. So, kind of the personal accolades that some of the drivers are chasing, that's really not something that Philip and I really care a lot about. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to put another trophy in the cabinet, and whatever it takes to do that, that I know that's what he'll do, and he can expect the same from me.
Now, your dad took some time off because he didn't want to be a distraction and wanted to help the team grow before he could get back into the car, and he did. So he's proud of everything that you've done, all the conversations I've had with him. How proud were you when he and Daniel Morad took the Mercedes to victory lane?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I'm actually kind of glad I'm not driving against him anymore, because I think if I have a bad day or I'm not 100%, I mean, he's going to be, pushing me along, and, going to be in front. So, I mean, the performance, changes that he's made over the past couple of years, I mean, really, especially working with Daniel and working on working on iRacing, and, just working on the consistency, qualifying and just kind of race awareness, is really, really special. So, it's really good to have him back in the car. And, I think he turned 67 in March, and man, I mean, he's got to be the fastest, 67-year-old on the planet. I mean, that guy can, drive the wheels off a car. So, really, really impressive to see, the way he's, come forward. And I think that's also a testament to, kind of the program we have here at Winward Racing. I mean, me and Bryce both, where we've come over the last 5 years, is testament to the team, and, to the people that we surround ourselves with, and to make sure that we get the most out of ourselves every time.
Well, it's almost like going back to the future. And your dad, Bryce, and you, the very first time you guys said, okay, we're going to go racing, you had a Back to the Future car. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, we've always been, big fans of racing, watch Formula One, endurance racing, ever since I was a little kid, and decided, hey, look, how can we, get into this, and what can we go start racing? So we, the first kind of foray into racing was in a series called the 24 Hours of Lemons, which is an endurance racing series where you have technically a $500 limit on the car, and not for safety. You can put whatever you want on brakes, and you have to have a roll cage in it and stuff like that. And then you go and endurance race it at some pretty famous tracks around the country. I mean, they used to go to Sebring and other places like that, and that was really our first kind of foray in there. And you had to have a theme. So I mean, we are not very creative. We just Back to the Future, and painted the car brushed aluminum and put a bunch of conduit on it. I mean, it's actually sitting in the showroom here. It's sitting next to the first ever Mercedes AMG to win the 24 Hours of Daytona, so it's in good company. And that car really taught you a lot about car control, man. I mean, probably the first thing we did was pull a power steering pump out of there, and that thing was from 1987, and it was kind of a death trap, honestly. I mean, I look at it now and I'd still drive it, but maybe with a padded cushion.
Does it make you appreciate even more how far you and your dad and the organization have come in really such a short amount of time? When you look at the grand scheme of thing of so many teams that have been around for decades and decades, and what you guys have been able to harness, trophy-wise and championship-wise in a short amount of time.
Yeah, honestly, Matt, it's really unbelievable, man. I mean, I'm incredibly competitive. Bryce is incredibly competitive. And, everything we've done, since we were little kids, from, entering into cardboard boat races to, doing, bicycle races, foot races, whatever it can, we've always been just ultra competitive. And, I think that extends into this as well. And, when we entered, we knew it would be a challenge, but I don't think we quite realized what, everything that would be involved and, how long of a commitment it would be to be successful. But these are the things that make these moments so special. I mean, it's not easy to do. And there's a ton of people out there that are really, trying their hardest as well. And that's what, to me, it's the ultimate, competition, on the face of the earth. I mean, it's a logistics competition. It's an engineering competition. It's physical. It's mental. It's, everything combined into one. And for you to be successful, you really got to have a good, dedicated team, around you. And you really just can't buy that. I mean, those are the things that you have to, build, from the ground up and, find the right people. And, if you treat them right, hopefully they'll stay.
When you talk about trophy hunting, you've been getting a lot of strategy awards, and it shows up in the final results. You've had to make a whole new area for the BDO trophy. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Charles and Brad from BDO, I mean, they've been, filling up our place full of trophies. And I guess we can thank the strategists at Winward Racing for that. So, what I've been told is that, we're the only team to have received it twice in a row at Daytona and Sebring, and the only team to have who have also won the championship and then received it, in the next two races. So, for us, we're really, really proud to, receive those awards from BDO. And I think they do a great job. And it's an awesome addition and award for the strategists and the engineers on the team.
So we went back to the future for your very first race car with the Back in the Future 300ZX, all done up perfectly for the movie. But what was your first passenger car, your on-the-road street car?
My first on-the-road street car was a Toyota Tacoma, like a 1990 Tacoma. And this was before, really the racing dreams were there, but, there was just a different focus in life. And then, I purchased a Jetta, drove that around, and, kind of that was one of my first senses of speed in a car. I mean, it's not the fastest thing, but it's pretty light. It handles well. And we used to take it to do some driver education events. And, just drive the hell out of the thing and, put some slicks on the front tires. Cause I mean, you didn't need them on the back. You wanted it to rotate, and it was front wheel drive. So, and that was really the kind of the first really, I guess, foray into speed, that we had was, driving that thing around. So
we talked at the beginning of 2024, and I said, why are you sporting? Cause every driver's identity in many ways is their helmets, their signature. And I'm like, why are you just going with the flat black carbon? And you gave me an incredible, deep thought process of why you were running the black carbon. And you said, but when I do what, I'll go ahead and go with the bling bling helmet.
Yeah, I said when I won the championship, I'd get the helmet painted. So I did. Yeah, I did end up getting it painted. So after 6 years of running a carbon helmet with stickers on it, I got it painted. And actually, it looks stunningly beautiful. I should have done it half a decade ago.
You had a great Long Beach. Now we're heading back to Laguna Seca coming up. A great place for you last year and the team. So the season just seems like now we're going to get into that great long summer stretch. And this is going to be another opportunity for you and the team to shine. Are you glad that we got through the first three and now we're looking ahead at the bulk of the schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first three events are the toughest of the season. I mean, they're the longest. They're, Sebring can be really hot. I mean, Daytona is obviously the longest race. And I think Long Beach has, some of the highest risk involved, for the sprint race that we do. And so, I think those are really some of my favorite events. I mean, I love every event on the calendar, but it's good to start heading into, some of these, sprint races and additional endurance races, some of the high speed tracks where I think that the, Mercedes really, really shines. So, Laguna, I've been on pole there in GTD before and looking to repeat it, man. I mean, I'm ready and, I can't wait to get back in the car.
All right, Russell, we're ready too. Can't wait to get to Monterey. Well, thanks for stopping by the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Matt.
If you happen to have seen our last episode, you know that we hit the streets and went up to the DXDT Racing shop and spent the day learning all about the team's preparation for Robert Wickens' debut out at Long Beach. He'll be coming by shortly, and we're going to go back and do a deep dive in his debut. That and more coming up on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. And Robert Wickens back on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast, back-to-back on the show. And Robert, when you look back to the past 7 years, this has been a dream that continues to build and continues to build. And then when Bosch came on board with the new braking system for you, that checked the box. So Long Beach is in the mirror. So did reality surpass the dream? And if so, by how much?
Oh, man, it was a whirlwind of a weekend. I mean, starting, frankly, the weeks prior, right? It was pretty intense. But man, it was a lot of fun. It was a good ride. So we didn't get the result we were hoping for. And, when everything was said and done, I tried to tell everyone at DXDT Racing, I'm happy that we're unhappy right now. I think ahead of the event, Matt, I think I was telling you, like, I don't know what to expect ahead of this journey. I don't know if we're going to be fighting for victories or podiums or top fives, or if we're going to be laps out of this thing in Long Beach, right? It was kind of a total unknown. And then sure enough, FP2 comes and goes. And after qualifying simulations, I was quickest overall. I shouldn't surprise myself. And honestly, that changed the entire outlook on the weekend, because suddenly we were in for a shot at pole and like maybe a podium or a win, and unfortunately we just didn't execute perfectly. And that's what I love about the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, is that to get these results you have to be perfect, and we just didn't do it this weekend.
When you look at the racing culture, and so often I'll have drivers tell me, I get on the airplane and I'll put my earbuds in and people think, oh, you're zoning out. They're like, no, I'm rerunning my entire race or my stints and what I could have done differently, better, what I learned. So on your plane ride home, because so often racers, they don't look at the positives. They're like, all right, this was bad, we got to fix it. This was bad, we got to fix it. But what were some of the positives and the lessons learned that you're going to try to clean up for the next race?
Well, I think definitely a lot of lessons learned, from first lesson being, I was actually unaware that in the IMSA WeatherTech series, if you cause a red flag in free practice, you lose your fastest lap in qualifying. It was a rule that had I had known ahead of the weekend, my kind of risk profile might have changed a little bit through free practice, in free practice too, in the early stages. While I was just trying to find the limit of everything, I went into the turn one runoff, just broke a little too late and opted to live to fight another day instead of risking putting the car in the wall. And I, again, just in experience, I had a hard time getting the car in reverse. So we had to get a pushback from from the corner workers from the safety team and caused the red flag. And I thought it was harmless until, frankly, about 10, 15 minutes before qualifying when I found out that I have to do 2 laps good enough for pole now. So that was kind of the first thing, and that kind of compounded into our qualifying. You know, we knew we needed to do 2 good laps to have a shot. So instead of waiting a little bit, we kind of just went out with the herd to make sure we had enough time to get 2 good laps. And we were just kind of stuck in a bad spot on track, some traffic, and actually had some contact with another competitor while we weren't even on push laps yet, just trying to find space. And unfortunately, it bent my right rear suspension and I had to do the whole qualifying like that. So it was just, that was kind of the turning point of our weekend. Because the Long Beach Grand Prix was such a track position race, and we qualified 5th. That lap got deleted, qualified 8th, and then really just tried to do what I could to make sure Tommy had a clean car. But yeah, definitely a lot of lessons learned. But like you said, there were a lot of positives. The fact that frankly we were competitive in practice 2, I'm quite proud of, especially. Full disclosure, how almost overwhelmed, I guess, I was in first practice. It was just a pretty scrappy session, first practice. It was obviously a lot to take in. Your first, IMSA WeatherTech session, there's, GTP cars buzzing all around you. And we had an issue on our install lap at the start of the session. So we lost probably about the first 15 or 20 minutes of track time. And then from there, to stay on schedule, I got out of the car, Tommy got in to do kind of the first baseline setup runs and to kind of establish a lap time for the car. And I didn't get my first laps in free practice 1 until probably about 15 minutes remaining. And then there was a red flag during that time. So I got basically 6 push laps in all of first practice. And I don't know, obviously, you want more. But yeah, it was kind of like, I felt like every lap I was just trying to survive to the next lap. And when it finally finished, I was just thinking like, what the heck just happened? And but then practice 2, Tommy did a great job kind of coaching me, getting me up to speed in between sessions. And so did, everyone at DXDT Racing. And we just slowly chipped away at it until, long and behold, by the end of the session, we were quickest overall going into quali. So it was, I think that's something when I think back on, I'm pretty proud of that.
When we were at the shop, and by the way, if folks didn't get a chance to see our previous episode, so much great content. Looking at the preparation, Josh Gibbs was at the shop. You guys were working on, the driver exchange and extracting you from the car and checking boxes to try to get all the details in order. So when you got to Long Beach, you could focus on the bigger task at hand. Was there a moment at some point in practice where you had an exhale and you're like, wow, okay, we're here, we're doing this. That felt great. Now let's focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, I would say it was probably, I want to say past halfway of free practice 2, so I was about 1.5 seconds off of Tommy in first practice. And internally, I wasn't happy with that. I felt like I needed to do a better job. I feel like I needed to be more comfortable, more confident. But it was just obviously a lot to take in. And all through second practice, I thought I made a decent step forward. But I was still about 1 second off of P1 at the time. And then every time we came in, we would probably do around 5 lap runs, come back in, check tire pressures, make maybe a small change or whatever, even for myself, just like catch a breath and then go back out. We were just slowly chipping away at it. But internally, I thought it was just, it's a temporary circuit. There's loads of track evolution. This is still just like the first day of practice for the track itself too. So, I was finding time, but I also assumed everyone was finding time. So I didn't feel like I was like finding enough until my final lap before we pit for new tires, probably a little bit after halfway through the session. And they came on the radio and were like, all right, Rob, that was a great lap. You're P5 overall. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. So like I'm finding time, but I'm actually closing the gap. And that was great. That was kind of the moment where I was just like, okay, I don't have to keep like being so hard on myself. I'm kind of in the window now, and now we can just kind of focus on trying to maximize stuff. So I think at that point on, I was like, okay, like we're getting there. We're feeling good. And honestly, that Corvette C06 GT3R was a rocket ship at Long Beach. It felt so good. And Tommy did a great job setting up the car, because frankly, like, I just told Tommy, you're the experienced hand here. You know this car inside and out. You know, I'm still trying to learn how to drive this car. So I felt like if let's say I was struggling with maybe like understeer or oversteer, I felt like it was probably because I was driving the car wrong. Unless Tommy had similar comments, right? And Tommy kept saying like, no, I think we're actually in a pretty good window. The car, you know, we didn't really change much setup from start to finish. The car was just that good right from the word go. So it was, honestly, an amazing experience. But honestly, still kicking myself about how qualifying went.
Well, when you talk to drivers and you go, all right, what's the most important race coming up? And they'll always say the next one. So for you, having to have a little bit of a break here before you get back behind the wheel, a great opportunity to work on and take a step back and do a big analysis of maybe some areas that you didn't even realize that you could make some gains on. But how tough to go, all right, we've got 4 more, but we're not racing next week, because you had such a fun time behind the wheel and you were able to exhale. You got the first one behind you.
For sure. And, you know, this first one, I kind of knew it was going to be a little chaotic, right? Obviously, it's a very fortunate place to be in, but there was a handful of attention on it, right? It seems like a lot of people wanted to see how I got on, and we knew kind of sharing the weekend with IndyCar, and given I was paralyzed in IndyCar, like I think there was going to be a lot of attention from that. Obviously from my other team that I work with in IndyCar, Andretti Global, like I know they were very invested in how I was getting on the weekend. But yeah, I mean, it's the best thing is that my next race is Laguna Seca, which is actually still the next WeatherTech Sports Car Series race. So I don't have to wait too long. In between then and now, I'm going over to Nürburgring to try to give the Nürburgring 24 hours another go. I need to go finish getting my permit over there. So no shortage of travel, and I'll be driving more cars here in the future. So I'm looking forward to it.
So at the end of the day, Long Beach is in the mirror. If there is one image, one moment that's locked in your brain forever, that it's that key special moment of that event, what would it be?
So the IMSA paddock was on the inside of turn 10. For those who kind of were there or even know the track at all, like just outside of the famous hairpin. So to get to the pit lane, you actually have to cross over the track. And there's a big grandstand right on the outside of turn 10. And the whole weekend, every time the entire IMSA paddock would take all their tuggers and tires and race cars and drivers and everyone over into the pit lane, that grandstand would just erupt with cheers, right? And I just assumed they were just like passionate fans until heading over there for the race, where it was actually just me, Josh Gibbs, and Katie Brannon, and we were just kind of walking over there on our own. Normally I would hitch a ride on a tugger or something, and it was just us just strolling over because we just had to get to the pit lane for the pre-race stuff. And everyone was just cheering and clapping and whistling, and I was just like, is that for me? And they're like, yeah, you dummy, of course they're for you, like, but not for us. And it was just like, I got actually emotional, you know. It was really cool because like it kind of the whole day, or even the day prior, before that, I was just kind of thinking like, oh, these guys just love motorsport. I was like, no, they're cheering me on, you know, but also obviously everybody else. But in that moment, like I was the only person on track, like just wheelchairing myself across the track, and it gave me goosebumps, and it was just an amazing, perfect representation of motorsport fans, right? And how supportive they are. I felt like I couldn't really go anywhere that whole weekend without being stopped or being told like how amazing my story is and what I'm doing for other generations. And like, it was exactly what I wanted, you know? And from that aspect, like for sure, like performance is great, but I think that kind of moment before the race, something that happened that felt like it was bigger than getting into the race car, you know? And that was really cool.
Well, it certainly was an amazing story, and it really transcended all of sports, because you had people that might not know a lot about IMSA WeatherTech Racing. They might not have even seen a race before, but they tuned in because it was such a spectacular motivational story and heartfelt for sure for so many. So, Robbie, I'm glad we've got one behind us, and we're looking ahead to Laguna Seca. Can't wait for that event coming up in mid-May. And thanks for letting us come by and hang at the shop before Long Beach and generate so many cool side stories that all played a factor at Long Beach. So incredible story. Thank you for your time, and can't wait to see you back behind the wheel at Laguna Seca.
Thanks for everything, Matt. I appreciate it.
All right. And the guy that was watching it all on TV, a former series champion, Pipo Derani. He'll be stopping by next to talk the season, Long Beach, but also the new Genesis program and the car that debuted at the New York Auto Show. That and more coming up. Well, it certainly has a champion's feel on this edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. Robert Wickens in Michelin Pilot. We had Russel Ward in GTD, and now two-time IMSA WeatherTech champion Pipo Derani joins the show. And Pipo, recently you were up in New York City, and it was like Christmas for the car guys over the next month with the New York International Auto Show, but you opened up a big present up there.
Hi, Matt. What a pleasure to be here talking, IMSA racing and sports car racing with you. But yeah, you're right. I just arrived from New York, where we presented our new Genesis GMR 001 hypercar. We did that at Genesis House. Genesis has a space in New York dedicated for, the fans and the clients to come and see what the brand is like. And then we took the car, once it was unveiled, to the New York Auto Show, which was an amazing experience. So yeah, everything new at the moment, but it's a very nice period for my career, let's say.
So a lot of stuff is going on. Not only do you unveil the new car, you're also packing up and moving.
Exactly. I mean, just before the interview started, we were trying to move around because the Eco was so big, so good. My house is empty. Everything is gone, and it's on the way to Europe. So I'm basically just stopping by to collect the last few items that I left and to do an interview with you. You guys don't want to know where I'm sitting right now, but the background does a pretty good job.
So you're saying basically, if you were a king, you would be in your throne room.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I won't go there about the seat fitting or anything like that. We'll leave that for an after hours edition. So much going on, but I'm not saying just now. But if you look back to the past decade, 2015 to 2025, so much maturity because so much has happened in your life. You pivoted from the single seaters over to sports car racing. You found the love of your life and got married to Marina, 2 kids, championships, marquee event wins, and now this whole new chapter. In many ways, it seems like it's been the slow rollout, but in other ways, does it seem like it's just happened almost ludicrous speed?
Well, it's interesting because now looking back, it's pretty much 10 years since I debuted in sports car racing. Did a couple races in Europe before joining the WEC for a couple seasons. But then coming to America for the IMSA Championship was really when my career took off. So it's kind of interesting to look back and see how much it has gone through already since then. But yet feeling so sharp and ready and at the top of my game right now. You accumulate so much experience at the same time. You're going through so many things in your private life as well. So it's the beauty of life. It never ends. There's always something new, challenges that you want to be a part of, and things you want to change, things you want to make the same as you did. So, yeah, it's a special moment for sure, but time flies, my friend. Time flies.
Man, it certainly does. And when you look over that period, where do you feel like you grew the most as a driver? Because everything is coming at you in so many different ways. Coming to America, running this series over here, trying to get your career really on the legs, because you've got great vision and the confidence in yourself. You just needed to have the right program.
The moment where I believe things improved or basically changed, and I felt like it was definitely a step forward, was after winning my first championship. Because up until that point, I had won many big races. I had won Sebring 3 times, three times by then. But Daytona, Petit. But there was always this extra fight for the first championship, and then finally achieving that in 2021 made things so much easier going forward. Everything just made more sense. Going into the 2023 championship that I won, I had so much less weight on my shoulders. So I feel like the learning, it's a process. It will never end. Year by year, you become a better person, you become a better driver, a better athlete, a better husband. It's a non-stop thing in life. But on a career point of view, having had the chance to take that weight off my shoulders just made me do an extra step in terms of confidence, and in terms of, you had the maturity, you had the calm in the important moments of the championship. So that was a step forward for sure in my career, having won the first championship in 21.
When you look back to Petit Le Mans, and I was in your pit area when you got out for the last time, and you walked around and you shook all your teammates' hands, and it was a hug, it was a thank you for the memories, because you were going to go on to this next great chapter. When you look back on that period, is there something that you'll say, that is the moment when I think of Action Express, when I think of that period of the wins, the championships, there's that one thing that will be the most special part for you?
I have many good moments and a few tears, which is normal from a relationship. Ultimately, at that particular point, I had a film going through my mind, because in life, sometimes you believe things can go on forever. But I needed a change. I needed a change to become a better person, but also a better driver, to keep growing in life. And after 6 years with the same group of people, I felt like I had to move on. Yet, you run through all those memories, all those victories and tears that you've had over the last 6 years, and it was a special moment in my career. They had been the group that gave me the 2 championships that I have today, and therefore so much gratitude for the time that I lived at Action Express and Cadillac. So it's just, it was a bit emotional on my side, having stepped out of the car for the last time. But yet also a moment of relief, because it felt to me like it was the right moment to move on. And sometimes it's hard to let go of things in life. You have that moment where you're like, should I go? Should I stay? And some question marks, but it was the right moment. And also, all that emotion came a bit of realizing that, yes, I did what I had to do with this group. I won what I wanted to win. And I've enjoyed I relished the moments I had with each and every one of them. And it's job done. It's, I did it, and it's time to move on.
There are moments when you're at the crossroads, and then you make a decision, and it's hammered down, and it turns out to be the next step that leads you to the next best great thing. And to be a part of the new Genesis program, what excited you the most? Because it seems like when you look at just all the different generations, it's very rare that you get the opportunity to be on the ground floor. Yes, you can have a brand new race team, but when you've got a brand new race car organization, clean sheet of paper, that has to be such an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, Matt, it was, as you described, I have been in the position and that, for example, with Action Express, we developed the Cadillac alongside Chip Ganassi Racing. But the team was in place already. So it was a bit of a smoother process, let's say. But when you have the chance to join a program where there's nothing, there's not even a single engineer involved yet, it's very special. And I was at that point in my career where I wanted a new challenge, and not necessarily a new challenge in the terms of just changing teams or manufacturer, let's say, but a real challenge where I put myself on my toes all the time, and I push myself to be better, and I try and be better in all aspects, not only behind the wheel, but in life as well. And so this came, let's say, in the perfect time. It's an opportunity that I believe for any athlete or any driver is hard to refuse, because when you are involved in the very, very beginning and it's just you and another teammate developing the car, you can take the experience that you've acquired on the development of your previous race car and improve the things you believe should have been better. And together with Andre, we will be doing just that. He will bring experience from the manufacturer he was racing for. I will bring experience from the one I was racing for. And together we will hopefully correct the things that we think wasn't great. And then on the other side, you have a great, passionate group of people who are starting, let's say, a new history for Korea in motorsports. That's another thing as well. We as a group, we as Genesis, is the first time we enter motorsports in a track racing series. They do rally, but it's the first time that Korea will have a proper racetrack involvement. So that's another point as well. When you have the chance to, let's say, shape the history of a country in the sport that we love, it's also an opportunity that's hard to refuse. So yeah. And then on top of it all, when you consider that the regulations that we race in, they are normally for 8 years approximately, and sometimes they can even be extended, you don't have many options to jump and develop new cars every 2-3 years. It's quite a few years before you get another chance. So having had this chance only a couple of years after developing the Cadillac, everything is still very fresh in my mind of things that I believe I can contribute and make it better. So again, amazing opportunity, and we just launched the car. I hope the fans love it. It will be soon racing in IMSA, and yeah, for sure it will be a fan favorite.
So inside, outside the cockpit, looking at the car from a distance, what's the one thing that you love the most about it, at least at this juncture?
From the program, you mean from Genesis? The passion, Matt, the passion that this brand has and the effort that they're putting in making this program, how much they want to involve the public, the fans, the clients, and use this platform to grow the fan base of the brand. It's amazing. It's something that you don't often get, because every time everything is so, everyone follows the line so perfectly, and it's so corporate, and they are letting the corporate side a little bit on the side, and going in with passion. So this is amazing. Now again, on the other side, you have the visuals of the program. The design office has done an amazing job in bringing this car to life in terms of how it looks like. I'm a bit biased because I believe that when you drive a car that's beautiful, you give that little extra behind the wheel. So yeah, it's an amazing time for sure.
So what's the track time schedule look like?
We're, developing right now all the software, starting simulator work and all that. Hopefully by the end of July, we'll be able to roll out the car for the first time. We don't have much time to homologate the car before the WEC season begins in end of February next year. So it's going to be a very tight, let's say, schedule to get everything up and running, especially as we mentioned before, it's a brand new program. We didn't have anything. We didn't have an engine. We had nothing. So putting the team together before we start working on the car and all that has been a monumental challenge, but a very nice one to be a part of, for sure.
Now, you ran the Rolex 24 for DXDT Racing, but when you look at Sebring, and you're like Mr. Sebring, and then Long Beach, several iconic races in a row, not being behind the wheel, how was that for you watching it from a different perspective?
I have to say, Sebring was difficult to watch. You know, it almost felt like something was wrong not being there. You know, I had been doing it since 2016 every year, and up until that point, pretty much won 50%, you know, from that, from when I started. So being on a couch was definitely something different, but it's good as well, you know, I wouldn't say give a step back, because we're so busy planning the future and getting this program off the white piece of paper. But it's good to look from far a little bit and see what the competition is doing and how they approach the racing, because when we're in it, you know, we can only see so much. You know, you're so focused on your own program. But when you start looking from a little bit of, you know, from outside, it gives you a different perspective of and ideas as well in how you should approach the next phase and the new program. So it was for sure difficult. You know, my heart was beating fast, not being there, and I was anxious. You know, it was harder for me to be at the couch than it would have been to be behind the wheel. But it shows that, you know, the IMSA is doing a great job. The event was amazing, and the fact that I wanted to be a part of and couldn't, you know, gives me, let's say, more hope that I will be back soon to tackle the 12 hours again.
Well, aside from the trophies and the championships, when you look back to just the pure form of driving a race car, does it almost take you back to when you started out in karts and just that purity and the romance about it? Do you still have that today, but maybe it's in a different way?
I mean, it's a little bit in a different way, because when you have the pressure of working for a manufacturer, that you know, it's a big responsibility. You know, back in the day when I was in go-karting, it was just the pressure that I put on myself, right? So, but you cannot only live off that pressure, because you can easily implode. You know, you have to enjoy the moment and understand that what you're doing, it's, let's say, in a way risky, and knowing that you have the full support of the brand and the team to enjoy a bit what you're doing, because what we do is nice. It's cool. You know, it's a privilege to do this for a living and to be entertaining people, you know, with such a special sport, through such a special sport. So, yeah, you try and bring back a little bit of the, let's say, nostalgia of the old days. But on the other hand, you have a very important task, working for big brand and having to deliver. So big responsibility, but you try to enjoy every now and then.
When you're looking at a race and you've won and you're on the cool down lap and the crew has already talked to you on the radio and everybody's, you know, screaming and yelling, and you hear that jubilation and emotion. And as you're making your way around the course and you've got the corner workers and they're waving flags or they're waving the drivers, what goes through your mind at that point? Is it more relief that we've got another check mark, or it's a whole new chapter of emotion for you that you've accomplished, you know, another win?
It really depends on how the race went. You know, sometimes you finish second and it feels like a win, and sometimes you win and it feels like you shouldn't. But at the end of the day, there are moments in any race that you'll be lucky or unlucky. Say, for example, my last win with Action Express, the 2023 Sebring race. We were lucky with the accident that happened at the end, but we were there to capitalize on it. We had started on pole. So there's always a mix in between jubilation and having, you know, and punchy the air, yet thinking, well, this was a lucky one and we'll take it, but it's not the way you want to win. We actually had a funny, not argument, but a funny conversation between myself, Alex, and Jack, because I'm Brazilian and Latin, and I have a little bit more of a, let's say, a warmth celebration. They're British and they're more cold, and they were like, well, they didn't have a single smile up until we got on top of the car, and I said, guys, I don't care what you're feeling right now, but put a smile on your face, you know? And at the end of the day, it's what I told them. I said, look, it's not that we were celebrating that the others crashed, but we were celebrating that we won a special race. Sometimes you are lucky and sometimes you give races away, and that's how it is. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't celebrate the fact that you just won the 12 hours Sebring, or that you should be sad. If you want to go ahead and tomorrow call those guys and pay them a beer and say you're sorry, fine. That's up to you, but at least smile and let's celebrate that we won. So it's interesting because I think each individual sees in different ways and feel different emotions when they win or they lose races. But the reality is that at the end of the day, again, we're doing something special. You know, we're privileged to be in this position and to be doing what we do for a living. And so we might as well enjoy the moment, enjoy the ride.
I think when you look at just racing culture and it's car people, it's father to son, father to daughter, mother to son, you name it. You can walk up and down the grid and you'll see that. And we always love to end the show with, what was your first car? But for you, I want to ask you about your most priceless car. And is that the Ferrari that you and your dad had so much history in when you were little, Pipo?
Yeah, that's the one for sure. My father bought this car back in 2002 or 3. It was his passion. You know, it was the car that he never let go of. It's an F355 Berlinetta manual that he never sold. And so, yeah, I ended up buying the car from my father's estate after he passed away, as a way of having a memory from the old man, you know? So every time I go to Brazil, I take the car around for a spin just to think about him. I barely use the car. It has 20-something thousand miles on it. Sits in a garage. I have someone who turns it on every now and then. But yeah, it's about, I'm not really, let's say, a big car guy in terms of having the need or the necessity to have the newest cars or the nicest sports car. I don't have that. In fact, I actually need a big wagon at the moment because the family is growing, and Genesis just gave me the GB80 as a company car, and it's just perfect. But yeah, that one Ferrari, it's more has a sentimental value much more than anything else.
And I love how you put your kid's feet print on the back of your helmet.
Yeah, they have to go with me, right? It's sometimes when you have a difficult situation and you have to go in and deliver, I now, as I'm putting the helmet on, I look at their little prints and I say, okay, I got to do this for these guys. And it gives a little extra boost, but more than that, just having them with me and reminding myself that life is so much more than racing sometimes. You know, you have so many other areas. And my father passed away with 66 years old. Cancer, you know, and then you have kids, you start realizing that what we do is important, but is nowhere near as important as family. And yeah, love them to the sky and back. And I love what I do, but certainly nowadays I do what I do nowadays much more for them than I do it for myself.
Well, Pipo Derani, 2-time WeatherTech champion. The new Genesis program, can't wait to see the car on the racetrack. But I will say this, that, you know, you might be able to earn a little bit extra money to help with the moving costs if we take the toilet that you've sat on. If you autograph it, you date it, we could probably put it on several different auction houses and get some big money for it.
Especially if we put some wheels on it, you know, and I and I ride it down the road. Who knows?
All right, Pipo, thanks for stopping by, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I look forward to being back in IMSA soon. Hopefully taking that Genesis to the victory lane would be special after all the development and the hard work behind the scenes. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed for sure. Pipo Derani, 2-time champion, and his throne down in South Florida. Well, thanks, Pipo Derani, for stopping by. You know, the fun meter is always pegged here on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. Now, for more great IMSA content, be sure to check out Season 3 of Win the Weekend, presented by Michelin. That'll be coming out soon. My pal Bozy and the rest of the great cast, they're going to be breaking down Robert Wickens' incredible journey and so much more from behind the scenes. So head on over to IMSA's YouTube page to check it out. Remember that in 2025, you can watch the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series live on IMSA's YouTube page. It's commercial-free in the United States and free globally for sports car fans, thanks to our friends at Michelin. For more great sports car content, check out our pals from the paddock. They have all the great perspective and cool stories from This Week in Sports Cars to the Double Stint podcast and Midweek Motorsports podcast. All great shows loaded with incredible content. And always remember to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app or IMSA's YouTube channel. Leave your comments and feedback or hit me up on X or somewhere down the road on a pit lane. Our next stop on the IMSA WeatherTech calendar, Laguna Seca. Can't wait for Monterey. We'll be covering that and so much more right here on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. For the entire team, I'm Matt Yocum. We'll see you at the track.